Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to France once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. So I know that'll make many of you watching the channel happy because we seem to have a little bit of an army of French followers these days after the Joica video, but it's really cool to introduce French beers to you here on the channel. There are some really nice traditional ones and there are also many nice American style breweries these days as well. So if you get the chance to try some French beer, I highly recommend that you do, and I'm pretty sure you will be impressed by it. I've always found that the winemaking countries in Europe tend to be very good when they try their hand at craft beer, and France is certainly no exception to that. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today comes from a region that is quite well known for its kind of more traditional beer in the beer world, although these beers are not all that well known outside of France, I hasten to add. And it's a style of beer that's native to France as well. So it's one that I don't get to review all that often, but one that I do very much enjoy. And this brewery is very reputable as well. So definitely going to be nice to introduce these guys to you here on the channel. Hopefully this is another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the Pais-de-Calais region, which is in the northern part of France, right next to the Belgian border. It was also known historically as French Flanders, from what I understand. But we're going to a little village called Saint-Sylvestre-Cappel, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Brasserie Monts, or the Three Mountain Brewery, I guess you could say in English. But this particular beer is called Biere Nouvelle. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and this one is a Biere de Garde, or a farm beer, as you could say in English. This one is the 2022 edition, and it was released here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälligt or temporary assortment. So yeah, I just thought this would be really interesting because, like I say, I don't get to review all that many Biere de Gardes, and I really quite like them actually. They can always be quite interesting, and this one has a bit of an interesting point to it as well. So I'll show you that a little bit later on. You can see it's also got a bit of a kind of crazy opener, a crazy top on it, so we'll need to see about that. We might have to pause the recording actually to get the beer bottle open. We'll need to see how that goes. But yeah, it's certainly nice to introduce another French brewery to you here on the channel, and it's cool to introduce things from that Pas-de-Calais region because there seems to be quite a few historical breweries up there. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to review more of those for you on the channel at some point in the future. But let's crack on with this one and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Brasserie Monts. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I've mentioned. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the French beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but I would love to have some beer mules in France. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Brasserie Monts, or Brasserie de Saint-Sylvestre as they were originally known. So, Brasserie Monts is based in the town of Saint-Sylvestre-Cappel in the Pas-de-Calais region in the north of France, right next to Belgium. And this region, as I mentioned earlier, was known historically as French Flanders. So, the company was founded in 1920 by Remy Ricoeur, who bought the brewery along with his wife Marie Savage. So, this brewery was, the facility they were using was owned by an original company, and at this point there were apparently about 200 breweries operating in this historic French Flanders region. But at this time the brewery were making low alcohol beer of just 1 or 2 degrees. I'm not sure exactly how that would translate into ABV, maybe like 2-3% kind of beers, but this was known as little beer, and these were delivered in wooden barrels, and apparently they didn't have such a kind of regular taste, if you like, so the brewery beers were all a little bit different for every batch, which is kind of interesting. And that's one of the things with these sort of farmhouse beers, if we can call them that. They can always be just that little bit different. But Remy continued to run the company until it was taken over in 1954 by Pierre, who had studied at the Nancy Brewing School. So he constructed a new brewery building and also created the famous Trémors yeast, which came from a combination of an English yeast and a Danish yeast, and the descendant of this yeast is still used in the Trémors beer today. Later on, in 1985, the brewery was taken over by Pierre's sons, Francois and Serge, and it was them that renamed the brewery Brasserie de Saint-Sylvestre after the village. So they continued to grow the brewery over the years and, you know, build up sales and things like this, and they remained in charge of the company until 2011, when Pierre Machida, who is the grandson of Pierre and the nephew of Francois and Serge, became the director. So a little bit later, in 2019, he took the decision to name the brewery Brasserie Trémors after their flagship product, with the name coming from the three mountains that surround the brewery. This is Mont Cassel, Mont des Cats, and Mont de Récollet. If I have pronounced that right, I apologise if any of my French pronunciations are not that good. It's been a very long time since I did French at school. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 30 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and the most famous one is of course the beer that is simply called Trémors, or Three Mountains Brewery, named after the Cassel, des Cats and de Récollet that I mentioned to you a minute ago. But that is an 8.5% Biere de Garde, and the Biere de Garde, or farm beer, I guess as you could call it in English, farmhouse ales. This is the beer style that is native to this region of French Flanders. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Brasserie Trémors for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is a 750 milliliter bottle. I'm not sure whether that's going to be an American measurement, so I'm not even going to try. But there you can see the Trémors label. This one is a little bit different from that, but as we said, this one is the Biere Nouvelle. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, this one, 2022 edition, and there you can see it has a little bit of an unusual top on it. So this is going to be the thing. We might have to pause the recording and see if we can get this open. But yeah, you can see, I don't know how well you can see that, probably, I know you can see it quite well. If you look at the sticker, the label on the beer, you can see some of the mountains and the little houses and stuff there, which looks pretty cool. But yeah, I believe I paid 50, maybe 60, I think maybe 60 Swedish krona for this. So that translates to roughly €6, which is for a 750ml bottle and an import beer at that. And it's fair, you know, 7.5% is kind of medium strength. I don't think that's too bad a price. So yeah, we paid about €6 for this one, about £5 sterling, and I guess that's maybe about $7, a little bit over $7 American, just for those of you watching in different places. But yeah, 7.5% ABV, this one. Biere Nouvelle, this was brewed with Magnum and Cascade hops grown right outside the brewery, so that is what makes this one a little bit special. But let's see if we can get this beer open and see what we can do. So this came off quite easily, and I don't know if the cork, I know the cork's going to come out really easily. This is not going to be a problem. There we go, a little bit of smoke on the opening then. Classically French, you've got to do it with a little bit of panache, I guess. And you can see, yeah, that should come out quite nicely. But let's get some of this guy out into the glass and see how we go. So yeah, the Biere de Gardes are always quite interesting. Usually they're quite nice, light, drinkable, sort of blonde, yeasty, bready beers. But yeah, the thing I'm noticing about this one is that it's very, very clear, and there's not too much sediment. If I shine the light through that, there's only a little bit of sediment visible at the bottom of the bottle there. So I don't think you would get too much of a kind of haze out of this one, if you like. Of course, it's going to be nowhere near some of these New England IPAs and stuff that you're getting in terms of haze. You would just get a little bit of that natural kind of thing going on there. But yeah, this is quite an interesting way to keep your beer close there. But there you can see they've got the name of the three mountains on the side of the cork there. Mont des Cats, Mont Cassel and Mont de Récollet. Récollet, I think, would that be? Récollet? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, oh, and there's the other side of it. Trémors, three mountains. But yeah, okay, we've got the beer out and into the glass, and it looks pretty good. So as you could see, when we poured this beer, it poured with about a finger and a half of a frothy I would actually say kind of almost bumpy white head. You can see that. There's a mixture of big bubbles and small bubbles in there. But yeah, in terms of the colour of this one, I'd say it's a lovely bright kind of pale golden straw colour, this beer. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on one, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do, or any adjuncts that you put in, will also affect the colour of the beer. But you don't really have to care about that so much when it comes to Biere. The main thing will, of course, be the type of malts and the length of the wort boil. But this one actually, it looks a little bit. I think this has probably had a fairly standard, 90-minute wort boil or something like that. It actually looks kind of similar to a Pilsner or a Helles or something like that. But certainly this kind of bright golden colour is certainly not out with the realms of possibility of what you would expect of a Biere. They can be a little bit more kind of coppery and things. Sometimes I have seen ones that have been a little bit more coppery, but regardless, it looks very nice. Steady stream of bubbles going up toward the bottom of the head, and you could kind of tell by the nature of the head when we poured it that it was going to have a fair wee bit of carbonation in it. So yeah, this should be a pretty nice beer actually. It certainly looks the part. I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of that. You can see it's crystal clear. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see how we go. That's pretty nice. I'm going to say straight away, it actually has, it really has a little bit, it's actually got quite a bit of sweetness to it, I'm trying to think, if I smelt this, blind without knowing what it was, I'm trying to think what style it would be. I would be tempted to say it's got a little bit of the almost kind of, it's almost got a wee bit of that kind of pilsnery, biscuity and crisp character to it, which is kind of interesting. Because it smells a little bit, it doesn't smell quite as sweet as some of the Belgian blondes and things. I don't know if I would pick, I don't think I would really know what to make of this beer. I actually would probably think this was some kind of lager beer, actually, to be honest with you. The aroma's quite striking in that sense. Because normally with a Biere, I would expect it to be a big, bready, smooth sort of thing. It would really have this really smooth, bright, bready thing. Sometimes they can be a little bit sweet, of course. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this is pretty interesting. So yeah, first impression of it is it's a nice, quite crisp, it actually really comes across as a big kind of crisp beer in a lot of ways. Might be the Magnum hop that's doing that, of course, because Magnum, I think, you can get Magnum all over the place, but Magnum, I think, was primarily a German hop, if I remember rightly. But yeah, a very crisp beer, this one. It comes across in the aroma as if it's going to be very drinkable. But let's break it down for you and just describe it a wee bit. So, the backbone of the beer, with this one, you've got a lovely kind of sort of fresh bread crust to it, which I think smells very, very nice, actually. So yeah, lovely fresh bread, kind of bread crusty character to this beer. That's the backbone of it. On top of that, you get some nice kind of crisp and but still quite fluffy white bready character to this one, like a fluffy, fresh white bread sort of hedgehog roll type thing. I really like that with this one. Yeah, so a little bit of bread crust, fresh fluffy white bread, and then yeah, on top of that, you do get a wee bit of sweetness out of this beer. There are one or two little slightly woody elements to this one, which you will quite often find in Biere. I mean, these beers are not a million miles away from Belgian Saisons. We should say that as well. They're not a million miles away. But yeah, this one for me, as I say, a little bit of bread crust, one or two little woody notes to it. And you've also got that nice little bit of, you do have a little bit of a kind of bread crusty, you do have a little bit of, that biscuity, McVitie's digestive kind of sweetness to it, this one, but it smells like a very crisp beer. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, just going from the aroma, I would not be surprised if this beer has a little bit of lager malt in it. Maybe not Pilsner malt, it doesn't smell quite as dry and crisp as that, but I would not be surprised if some of the malt in this beer is specifically lager malt, because you really do just get that bit of crispness out of it. But yeah, as I say, a bit of bread crust, a bit of wood, definitely a wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit. You're getting some of that sort of crisp thing from what I suspect is some kind of lager malt. Not 100% sure about Pilsner malt, but it would fit. But yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, when you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you know, you can get that bigger, thicker, bready sort of thing. Yeah, so you get that nice big, you get that nice big white. You do get a bit of that nice big kind of white quite big doughy bready note to it. It's got a wee bit of a kind of, you do get a little hint of that kind of banana yeasty sort of thing that you can sometimes get from Belgian beers, for example. There is a little bit of that going on there, but you have to take the aroma in quite deeply to you do have to take the aroma in quite deeply to do that. So if you take the aroma in deeply with this one, you'll get more of the kind of thick, big, bready sort of notes to it. But you also get a good little bit of that McVitie's digestive sort of character. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is pretty nice, I have to say. I like the malty and yeasty side of this beer, but as I say, compared to other Biere de Gardes I've had in the past, this one strikes me as being, you know, quite light and quite crisp. I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty side of things. I've often found that some of these Biere de Gardes, some of them can be very complex, but some of them can be quite straightforward in a way, and I think this one is leaning towards the kind of straightforward, drinkable side of things. But let's focus on the hops and the green component first off. So, on the hoppy side of things, you do get a little bit, there's a wee bit of an earthiness to this one. You get a nice bright floral aromaticity. It does have a wee touch of, bitterness to it, which I think is nice. You can smell that straight away. It's got a very bright floral aromaticity to it. There's some nice grassy notes in there as well. It's a little bit zesty, and I do like how that, all that goes together. So yeah, wee touch earthy, nice kind of deeper floral aromaticity, a bit of a zesty grassiness to it, and the way that all goes together, I think, is very, very nice. I like that with this one. The green component is kind of adding to that sort of thing that you're getting from this kind of lager malty note. Let's look at the fruity side of it though. Oh, it's getting a wee bit windy. Well, it's raining. I thought it was getting a bit windy outside. It started raining. There we go. But yeah, on the fruity side of things with this beer, there's not too much to report. I mean, I get a little bit of that kind of apricot-y note to it. Yeah, there's a wee touch of apricot in there. There's a wee bit of wee bit of apricot. There's a wee bit of an oily pear for sure. And as we say, it's Magnum and Cascade in this one, so you do get a little touch of that, that kind of slightly figgy, red fruity sort of thing that you can get from Cascade. I'm very, one of my favourite beers back home in Scotland, the Schiehallion Lager from Harveston Brewery. It had Cascade in it, and I'm just very familiar with it. You can just smell that very slightly red fruity undertone from that beer. From that hop in this one. So yeah, you get a wee bit of the red fruit of the Cascade, a wee tiny hint of grapefruit, but an oily pear and a slightly dry apricot-y sort of thing. The fruity notes in this are quite straightforward, I have to say, but I like it. I do like how this goes together in terms of aroma. So as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but I think it's about time that we had a taste of this one. So this one is the Biere Nouvelle, a 7.5% Biere de Gardes farmhouse beer from Brasserie in Saint-Sylvestre-Cappel in the North Pas-de-Calais region down in France. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, santé. Yeah, first impression that I got from the aroma isn't too far away from what I was thinking this beer would be. I'm going to say straight away, this is pretty nice. It's just a nice, easygoing, drinkable beer, this one. It goes down. It's 7.5% this, but it kind of goes down like, maybe a 5.5%, like a 5.5% lager beer, this one. It's quite Interesting. I should point out though, this is an ale. Make no mistake. It smells a little bit like a lager beer, this one, but the Biere de Garde is an ale. So remember, lager beers, low temperature fermentations, 9 to 12 degrees usually Celsius, whereas the ales are about 15 to 18 degrees Celsius normally, high temperature fermentations. Yeah, this is pretty nice, this one. I'm going to enjoy this. It's just a nice day. It was sunny outside, and that was why I kind of cranked open this beer, because I was thinking it'd be nice to just sit down, review it, and then enjoy the rest of it in the sun, but that's not happening now. Yeah, but this is a really solid beer, this one, but definitely in terms of the Biere de Garde style, it's one of the crisper and cleaner ones that I can say I've come across over the last wee while. But as I say, I don't get to review this style that often, so your input in the comment section, your thoughts on this beer and Tremont generally, would be kind of interesting to hear. But yeah, so let's break this beer down as we always do. So middle third of the palate, then you can feel that nice little bit of bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. So you've got that nice little bit of bread crust in the in the middle third of your palate. You can feel that there. On top of that, there's a little bit of a kind of more crisp white bready sort of thing. So yeah, that all works out as I thought it was going to from the aroma. So yeah, the bread crust is forming the backbone of the beer. You've got that fluffy but still quite crisp white bready layer on top, and as you move toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little touch of a woody character coming out of this beer, which I really do like. So yeah, you can certainly pick out that in this beer. The woodiness actually just kind of lingers there a little bit into the aftertaste. But as I say, a little bit of bread crust, fluffy white bread on top of that, and then on top of the white bread, this beer really does have a sort of biscuity and sort of lagery malt presence to it. So this is interesting. If you go into the middle, the dead, on top of the bready layer of this one, and I think the further into the aftertaste you go, you start to feel there is a bit of the bread crust. You do get a slightly brown bready layer, and then the white bready layer. The brown bready layer I think takes a little bit to come out, but then as you move toward the front of that middle third of your palate, there is a slight woody note to it. But on top of the white bread, you've got a circle in the middle of your palate, and that's where the kind of sweeter side of this beer is coming out. So you can feel that in the dead centre of your palate, the kind of biscuity, brown, sugary notes in the middle are really, are really quite concentrated and quite heavy. But then as you move further and further, out toward the edges of the palate there, they start to become more, they start to become a little bit more kind of biscuity and so on. So yeah. So yeah, you've got that kind of concentrated, brown sugary note in the middle of the palate, and that's your alcohol, of course. That's where the alcohol is kind of covered, so you can feel that slight booziness in the middle of the palate with this one. But as I say, as you move further out, it gets a bit lighter, and then you get a bit more of a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of edge to it the further out that you go. So I do like that. As I say, I like how that goes together in this one. So that gets a thumbs up from me. Yeah, interesting for sure. So on the I think other than that, I don't think there's really much to say about that middle third of the palate. But if you go toward the back of it though, to that border region between middle third and back third of the palate, you do get a wee bit of a crispness out of this beer. And again, as I say, I suspect that this could be from some sort of lager malt, maybe even a Pilsner malt. It does really have a bit of crispness to it, this beer. So I'd be very curious to know if they have used a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this one. But this one, just looking at the ingredients and stuff like that, when we look at the ingredients, it says it does have a little bit of wheat in it, and it's barley malt, just wheat and barley malt. The wheat is kind of interesting. It's now that I know that there's a bit of wheat in it, I'm not, that would make sense when I think about that. It does make sense with the kind of the white bready layer that we have in this beer. So that's kind of interesting too, definitely. But yeah, other than that, as I say, I don't think there's much to say about the middle third of your palate. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you do feel a little bit of a build up there, a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty kind of thing. You can feel there's that wee bit of kind of crisp Pilsner malt as well, which I like. So yeah, I like that about this one, but then the back third of your palate, you've got the back third of your palate, you've got a wee bit when you go there. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of, you do get that, you can feel the kind of bread crusty base there again, and that's a wee bit more grainy. Remember, more bitter flavours come out toward the back of the palate. On top of that, you can feel the white, you can feel a little bit of the brown bready layer as well, but then on top of that, you've got a white bready layer. You can also feel that white bready layer feels a little bit more bitey, and that's the wheat that's giving you that. On top of all of that, you can feel a wee bit of a contribution from the yeast, and the yeast is quite interesting because you can feel a slightly more dense bready doughiness, but it's not too big, but there is almost a little bit of a slightly peppery almost kind of thing to the yeasty note there, and that's sitting on top of everything else. That is sitting on top of everything else on that, that's sitting on top of everything else on the back third of the palate. So yeah. Yeah, the way that goes together, I think, the way that goes together is very, very nice in this one. So yeah, for me, it gets a thumbs up. It gets a thumbs up in that, from that perspective. But yeah, I like that. The other thing we should say is that on the back third of the palate, the flavour feels a lot taller, but then as you come further forward, it condenses down and squashes together a wee bit more. So yeah, I very much like how that goes together. On the hoppy side of things then, let's move to that hoppy side of the beer. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice wee earthiness in there. So yeah, you do get a wee bit of that, but then as you move further forward, you have a nice big floral aromaticity to this beer, and that comes out quite nicely. It's got a good bit of spiciness to it, and I always remember Magnum being a little bit of a spicy hop, to be honest with you. And as I said, you get New Zealand Magnum, German Magnum, I think you get American Magnum too, but you can feel this beer does have a wee bit of bitterness to it, so I suspect there has been a little bit of early edition hopping going on here. Remember, early edition hops are the ones that give you the bitterness, that give you most of the bitterness out of the beer, but you can feel from the depth of the bitterness you get in this beer that it's most likely early edition hopping. Late edition hopping gives you mainly flavour and aroma, but a little bit of bitterness. Then dry hopping gives you all flavour, but I suspect this beer has maybe I think it's probably got a mix of all three, to be honest with you. There will be a little bit of a few different things going on with this one, but yeah, you can feel the depth of that floral aromaticity and the spiciness of it. To me, that indicates that would indicate a sort of late edition hopping. So yeah, I like how that goes together for sure. But yeah, round the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and a wee bit more sort of it is a wee bit more kind of oily as well. So yeah, I do like how that goes together. You do get a wee bit of zestiness on the front tip of the palate there, which is nice. But let's focus on the front third of the palate then, and see how we go with this. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up there. The base of the front third of the palate, wee bit of bread crust, smooth white bread, and yeah, I like how that goes together. On top of all of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters come out of the beer, and if you know these two hops, it's kind of what you'd expect, to be honest with you. The Cascade, I think, comes out quite nicely in this, but you do get a wee bit of stuff from the Magnum. So toward the back of that front third of the palate, there's a kind of bigger grapefruity note, but as you move further forward, you can feel that the Cascade mellows out and starts to give you a wee bit more of a kind of that kind of figgy note that we would associate with it. So you do get a wee bit of that, but underneath all that there is a wee bit of an apricot note, and as you push into the front half of the front third of the palate, it's more like an oily peary character that you're getting from this one. So that's quite interesting. The Cascade adds an interesting dimension to this Biere de Garde. But like I say, for me, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the flavour of this one. I think we've described it right enough. There's maybe just a wee tiny touch of lemon or limey note on the very tip of the tongue when you mix in with the grassy esters. But yeah, other than that, I think that's everything. But this is interesting for me. This is definitely one of the lighter and crisper Biere de Gardes that I've come across. And I think on that note, we can round off with the mouthfeel. So for me, you know, this beer is like top end of light bodied, bottom end of mid bodied. It's in that kind of region. Carbonation is actually quite crisp on this one, but you do get a good bit of oiliness out of this beer as well, and a wee bit of slickness, and that's characteristic of an ale. So I like that. I do like how that goes together. On the other side, yeah, I think it's quite an oily. It's got a wee bit of an oily kind of slick sort of thing to it. So yeah, I like how that. I do like how that comes out in this one, but yeah. The beyond that, I'd say that it's the hoppy side of this beer. If we think about the bitterness, it's maybe about say 30 or maybe 40 IBUs. It does feel a wee bit more bitter. I'd be tempted to say 40, to be honest with you. There's a wee bit of bitterness this one. 40 IBUs I think is maybe about right. The malty side of things is interesting. There's a good bit of sweetness there. It has a wee bit of booziness, and you also get a little bit of a kind of grainy smoothness as well, and you've also got the more oily, fruity side to it as well. But overall, I do really like how this beer. Goes about its business. It's an interesting Biere de Garde, this one, and definitely one of the lighter and crisper examples of this style that I've come across. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting review. I don't get to review many Biere de Gardes, so I always enjoy them when we do get the chance. But yeah, this one was the Biere Nouvelle, a 7.5% Biere de Garde with Monts own hops, Cascade and Magnum, from Brasserie Monts in, I'm going to forget it, Saint-Sylvestre-Cappel in the Paid-de-Calais region in the northern part of France. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below, and let me know what your favourite beers are from Brasserie Monts as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the very near future. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next review. Slàinte, Skull, cheers, check out my social media, check out Brasserie Monts' social media, and do let me know some other French breweries and Biere de Gardes that I should check out. Slàinte just now, guys. Santé.